Hello, new hunters coming to Monster Hunter Rise now that it's finally coming to the Xbox and PlayStation platforms. Welcome to the hunting family. The guild, I should say. That's probably the more appropriate word to use. Welcome to the guild for Rise. Hopefully you're going to have as much fun with this game as I did. One of the massive benefits you guys are getting on Xbox and PlayStation is the game is launching in version 10.0, which is the version that the game was updated to right before Sunbreak, the big expansion, launched. So you guys are getting the full advantage of every single update for a year, a full year's worth of updates. And this includes not just content, but also things like balance changes and quality of life additions. And we're going to get into some of that in these suggestions, because I'm going to tell you about some settings you should change, like as soon as you can. There's a little bit of tutorial stuff before you can actually get into the menu to change your stuff, frustratingly, but as soon as you can, have a look at these because they are useful to change or at least know about. So if you want to change them, you know where they are, or indeed you know they can be changed. I've come across a few Reddit posts saying, oh, I wish you could do this, and it's like, it's right there in the menus. Why don't you look at the menus? What kind of gamer doesn't scroll through the menus? Anyway, right from the main menu, I suggest popping into audio and slide player voice frequency down to at least 50%. That's a nice spot for me, because this controls the automatic voice lines from your own character during battle, and they can actually be really handy because they do things like warning just before a large attack. Oh, the monster's going to attack, or look out, that kind of stuff. But by default, these voice lines trigger way too often. There's a lot of nonsense stuff that's just sort of flavor and character stuff, I guess.
Nothing personal! You're my best pal.
But the endless, pointless chatter can become very annoying very quickly. And it becomes quite repetitive because there's only so many voice lines for every voice you can choose. And it becomes quite repetitive because there's only so many voice lines for every voice you can choose. And it becomes quite repetitive. So slide it down to about 50% or even less, and you'll only really get the more important stuff. The follower setting there is a Sunbreak thing. You probably won't have that, but again, just so you're aware, once Sunbreak does come, remember it, because same deal except for your followers, which are NPCs that can join you on a hunt. It's awesome. But they are very, very chatty unless you turn this down. So, Monster Hunter as a series is a little notorious for having a HUD UI that's a little intrusive and cluttered by some people's standards. Rise is actually pretty decent on this score by comparison, but still, know that you can turn off individual items of the UI to suit your personal tastes and needs. I'd recommend leaving it on at default until you get a feel for which bits you like having on, which are useful to you, and which bits you sort of feel like you don't need or just get in the way or a bit too distracting and whatnot. For me, I usually just have the action bar turned off, as I only ever change the active selection here infrequently, and I default to having it as a quick tap to mount my palamute, and give me a couple of left taps to pop off a chat sticker or a celebratory dance emote and the like at the end of a hunt. And even if this is turned off, it'll reappear as you make a change in selection on the D-pad, so I don't need it ever present. It doesn't need to be there, it's clutter. Player silhouette is a must change for me in every save file. This is one of the first things I go to and change immediately. It'll give you a little outline of your hunter when you'd otherwise be obscured by view by the monster's own body or whatever. Knowing your exact position, facing direction, and animation stage is more useful to me than the arguable drop in immersion that this see-through vision comes with. It is off by default. I personally like Type 2, which is a subtle but still easily viewable thin black outline. Other less subtle, brighter color choices are also available if you find the black a little bit too subtle for your eyes. Player hit effects and other player hit effects. These are the often quite intense and intrusive anime-like damage splashes and slashes and stuff. I strongly recommend turning at least other player effects down to the 25% minimum, as these can be quite visually messy and hunts. This is one of those things that was added in a much later update. We didn't have this when Rise first launched, and if you're on a hunt with one or even two gunners, for example, using piercing ammo, it could be times where you couldn't see the monster for all the splashing going on. It was ridiculous. Like two ranged users using piercing ammo or whatever, it just creates an eye-searing flood of hit effects that can legitimately completely obscure the actual monster and make it impossible to see what's going on. You can't see the telegraphs as the next incoming attack, you can't see who it's targeting, you got nothing. So I definitely recommend turning these down immediately. You can even turn your own down if they still annoy you. I also like having character names of, as these player nameplates are pretty intrusive visually for me, sitting as they do over the top layer of everything else and from quite some distance. The immersion is a little gentler with these off in my tastes, and you've still got the map to see where exactly everyone is, and if you're close enough to see them, you can see them anyway. You don't really need their nameplates, and everyone's color coded, so it's fine. I don't need that. Now under controls, I'd suggest turning on manual sheath. The default is automatic and it can be a bit friggin' annoying sometimes. Thank you game, but I will stay in control of when my weapon is and is not at the ready. This next one is pretty important too. Rise has a monster riding mechanic, and when you do a certain amount of specific damage type, you trigger a mount state. It'll look a bit stunned for a minute and give you the option to mount it. There's a tutorial on this in the opening of the game, so I won't dig into it in any more detail. Main point is though, by default, the mount happens on the next tick of damage you do to the monster, which can be very annoying and really mess with the rhythm and flow of your attacks, and especially if you're in the middle of a combo. This annoyed a lot of players when the game launched, so in a later patch, Capcom finally gave us the option to make this optional. I like the A weapon sheath options, which means Wyvern riding is still super easy and super fast to do, but a regular attack won't do it, so I can finish my combo, or I can keep doing damage for a little while if I like. Or I can completely ignore the mount, which is not an option at default, because if you do any damage, you automatically mount, but if you want to ignore the mount, just do damage anyway while they're in this stunned state, go for it. Next, and finally for my general settings tips, under the camera controls, another strong recommendation to pop the camera distance to 100. It's not actually a huge difference visually, but the slight zoom out does give you a little bit better situational awareness, which in this game is a pretty key skill. And lastly, outside of the game settings comes something else I'll strongly recommend setting up very early on. Customizing your radial menu and getting used to using it in battle. It is an extremely fast and efficient way to pop healing, antidotes, sharpen your weapon, eat a ration, crank out a flash bomb, neck down a nullberry, all that kind of stuff you would normally have to scroll through your action bar to get to. The default setting has some pretty odd choices, so once more, again, strong recommendation to set it up in a manual way that makes sense to you. I like having my 2 potion types at sort of the 10 and 11 mark, so regardless of what I've got my main hotbar selected on, I can access them at any time. Also super fast access to flash bombs down in the bottom left corner, and flash bombs and timing them correctly is invaluable for monster interrupts, and doing it this way is so much faster than scrolling to it. Poison healing, of course, down the bottom. For the hunts you need that in, it's really nice to have that quick as well. Then I've got stamina recovery item and a nullberry. And lastly, a friendly little chat bubble to quickly pop off when the team is doing great. A little bit of encouragement. I didn't have anything better to put in that slot, so yeah, I put that there. And you can set 4 completely separate radial menus, which can be switched to and from at any point mid-game, even mid-fight. So aside from my default one, I also have one set up for when I'm playing Gunner, for example. So I've got an entire radial menu set up for rapid ammo crafting, and I've got another one dedicated to some useful chat messages, so I don't even have to bring up the chat window. I've got a whole bunch of different chat messages, confused faces and happy faces, and I'm on my way, little stickers and stuff like that. All in a little radio menu that's all really quick to get to. You don't have to dive into the menu, you don't have to stop dead and press the menu button and go to the chat menu, select the thing you want to chat and press the thing. It's so much better. And then there's the action bar. I gave mention of this before when I was talking about the UI stuff, but customizing this is also strongly recommended. There's stuff here you might just want to turn off completely because it'll save you time as you flick through it for the other useful stuff. I like having the ride command as default, as a quick D-pad tap is my preference over the default, which is a hold the A button down to trigger the mount. It's just a little bit faster and more responsive in my tastes. Then I have the wait command to get my pets out of the way, really. I usually only use this when I'm in photo mode. Felvine, of course, underrated booster for your Palico photo mode itself, and another few chatter mode options which I use at the end of a hunt, not during the middle of a hunt. I like to have a congratulatory sticker there to go at the end of a hunt, and then I do my dance of celebration, or as I call it, my dance of dominance. Now obviously this kind of stuff, indeed how you set up your radio menu at all, is all up to your own tastes and needs and what you feel is more valuable to you, but however you do it, one last time I strongly recommend setting these up manually and getting really used to using them in a hunt. Make it muscle memory, as they really are extremely fast and efficient ways to do things you'd normally have to tab through the hotbar to get to, which can take much longer and leave you much more vulnerable in the middle of a hunt when your fingers aren't on the buttons they should be on. But that's about it. Those are the major interface and menu changes that I will always change whenever I'm starting up a new file for this, and I will be doing the same on Xbox and PlayStation as well immediately. Hopefully you found this useful, informative. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there whose above and beyond support, as always, is appreciated. I am Blotty, and I will catch you next time.